Yep, hi everyone. I hope that you've had a great evening yesterday, so I can see your faces. It's just like a little bit tired, but hopefully you'll find an interesting things for you within my talk. And when I was thinking about how I want to start today's talk, I've just recalled this story that we had the other day, and we do have Friday Tech Talks, where the engineers share some interesting things that happening across our organization. And the other day, one of the engineers was sharing how he used an AI to build a new product, and his speech was great. So he shared how it allowed him to use an AI to focus more on higher abstraction levels instead of some low technical things. And one of the first questions to him was like, okay, that's great, but what are the numbers? How much traffic do you have? How many users registered? And I guess that this greatly illustrates the shift within our company to the product and business perspective. And today we are going to focus on those changes. So my name is Bogdan. I am head of engineering at Jooble, and today I'm going to show the story of our company. At Jooble today, any engineer can open a dashboard, filter by their product data, and point in the graph saying something like, see this bump? That's the change we shipped last sprint. And it's okay for us now, but it definitely wasn't this way a few years ago. Back then, we did what most companies do. We've shipped some tasks, we closed Jira tickets, we've did sprints, retros, and I wanted to say that quietly people were asking if any of these did anything useful for the teams, for the business, or for our users. But frankly, no one gave a damn about that. And if you shipped something, waited a month, and afterwards still didn't know if it helped anything or not, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And today's talk is going to be about this shift. It's how we moved from the approach of just give me a task to the okay, now I can see how my work impacts business. And it's not going to be a fairy tale. We've had a lot of tries and errors. We had a lot of fear, confusion, and we still are on that path for the brighter future. So, despite that, we've really changed how we approach our work and how we approach our decision making within the company. So let's start from the overview how things at Jooble looked a few years back. We were structured in a very standard vertical way. Product managers sitting in their functions, analytics in theirs, infra, engineering, ops, all of them were sitting in their corresponding verticals. A full experiment cycle could take up to months and a half, 2 months, because like the delivery process looked very standard as well. So product managers did set up a framework experiment, engineers developed it, shipped it, and once we get data, analysts just like told if anything worked or not. And if we understood at some point that we've had an issue, we've had a bug, or we just like simply wanted to change the experiment setup, going back and iterating was painfully slow. And after all, we've just like, it was uncomfortable, but we've still managed to work with it because you could over to someone, ping them directly, ask for a favor, and we've somehow did our jobs. But then we've got a business restructuring. We've got two businesses merged, and in one day, the amount of people within the company grow like 2, 3 times more. And that's the moment when the mess really hit. Teams worked in silos. People didn't even know what of the rest of the company is doing. We even had these spokespersons who were supposed to represent their teams to the rest of the company. And if you were an engineer, your life looked like that you get the ticket, you implement the task, you ship it, and afterwards, someday, someone maybe will tell you if you did anything useful or not. Like maybe. And we were good at shipping outcomes, but we were not great at seeing outputs. That's when we understood that we needed to change. At some point of time, we had to ask ourselves a pretty brutal question, like how many teams at Jooble can ship an end-to-end feature for our users without throwing the work to 3 other teams? And of course, the answer was not many. We've had so-called cross-functional teams. And in reality, you know how that means. It's just like backend plus frontend plus QA. But the hard parts, like understanding what the problem is, framing the experiment, making sense of the data, deciding what to do next, all of that lived somewhere else. So we've started looking into different ways of structuring our organization. And we didn't want to implement some frameworks perfectly, but we wanted to solve pretty practical problems. The decisions were slow, that the experiments were slow, and that the ownership was fuzzy. And during our discussions, like 3 principles kept coming up, which were organized around value and not around functions. Give teams everything they need to actually own that value. And the third one, that we should make the information and the strategy visible enough so teams don't need to guess what really matters. We were already building our strategy across the value chains, so that's why we wanted to look into the value streams. So what the value stream in our terms? We didn't start from the org structure, we've started from the outside. We've asked ourselves pretty simple questions, like who are our clients? What are the flows of value for them? And for the Jooble, at the very least, it means job seekers on the B2C side, employers and partners on the B2B side, and maybe some consumers of the shared capabilities inside the company. We mapped how those people get the value from the Jooble platform, how the job seekers look for the job and apply for the job, how partners and employers post their jobs and promote them, how some cross-cutting things like improved experimentation, improved search quality, infrastructure sit within those flows. And from that mapping, we've defined value streams. A value stream owns a very specific part of the overall picture. It's not just an analytics team or front-end team, it's a product team that owns user journey and the metrics that define the success there. At some moment we said like, okay, let's give this stream the team that consists of product manager, engineers, designers, analysts, all of them together. And this product team is supposed to have single backlog, tighter cooperation, and they should be able to take an idea from the concept through the implementation into the production and then iterate on it over the data. We built our organization with the thought of not what we are, but with the thought of what our clients need. And engineers were not getting the tickets in the end of the long chain anymore, but they were the part of the discussion from the very beginning. You understand the context and the purpose of what you are building, not just technical tasks, which actually allowed you to see what you are working on and build the connection between your work and metrics that are important for the company. And this change actually impacted how our executive team operates as well. Because before value streams, leadership team was directly managing functions. With value streams in place, they were able to step back and just focus on defining and leading the strategy, while bringing alignment across the streams as well. Right now, executives mostly work with the head-level roles within the streams, and actually that created the space for the streams to actually own their outcomes. And this doesn't make the company look flat, but actually this allows to bring closer decisions about what we are going to do next within this area to the streams. And right now, those decisions are not being held by someone centrally 3 levels up. The other huge leverage wasn't structural at all. It was all about the data. And we've made a very intentional move. We said that people across the company must have enough context and they should be able to make sense of the product and financial dashboards within the company. Not just some circumscribed reports for managers, but the real data that shows how company and how their product area is doing. And we did that, the conversations within the teams changed. Prior to this, our dailies were very task focused. You know how it usually works, yeah? Yesterday I was working on that ticket, today I'm going to work on this ticket. Our demos were mostly about showing new UI changes and showing new APIs with hoping that stakeholders would like it. While having dashboards in front of the teams, people started talking more about metrics and how their work impacts the business. Sprint reviews became less about the list of the completed items and more about answering questions: what did we try? What did we learn? What will we do differently? So to support that, we've also introduced sprint review days. And the sprint review day is the day where teams share their progress during the last few weeks, and they're sharing their plans for the next ones. And on the same day, business teams talk also about how the finances look like and what are the changes in their corresponding markets. So everyone within the company gets the bigger picture. And this is not the usual PM demo. That's actually engineers walking through the changes within their streams and walking through the changes within their product metrics, showing what was shipped and what the metrics are. And to underline how important this is, we actually limit the other meetings during that day. So people can focus on listening and presenting. And over time, those sprint review days became one of the key instruments for us to keep alignment across the streams, so we just not control every step they make. For an engineer, the shift was pretty noticeable as well, because previously your work usually ended at the place like merge to main. And afterwards, maybe someone could say something like, okay, we shipped this change, but we are not sure if it did anything. Within the new setup, the conversation shifted to the place where we say okay, we shipped this change, our key metric is X, here is what worked well, here is what didn't, here is our guess why, and that's what we are going to try next. And don't get me wrong, you still write the code, you still review PRs, you still fix bugs, but now there is a visible line between what you ship and what is important for business. And that's something what makes an autonomy in our case from an abstract word into something you really feel. Now, none of this came for free. When we started talking about this change, people started sharing very real concerns. Like when we showed the new org structure for the managers, they ask, will my role disappear? What happens to my team? Will I still have place within the company? Some engineers were honest and said like, okay, can we just go back to the old models where I just get tasks from Jira and don't need to think about this product and business stuff? So from the top, it wasn't easy as well, because when you do this change, the first things you see is chaos and short-term slowdown. So members of the executive team started questioning the change we've made. They started coming back to us and asked like if we should revert everything back. And it took time. It took nearly 6 months before we were able to clearly see the positive impact on the organization. And during those 6 months, you need to hold your nerve because you see teams that learning to work differently. You see some temporary slowdown and deepens within the productivity. You see some people deciding that this new way of working isn't for them. And I guess that's really painful. That's uncomfortable, but it's okay. That's a normal process. And one thing we've tried to hold on to during this change was pretty simple. Like, if we expect from people to behave like adults, we need to treat them like adults. If we change expectations from their role, we need to support that with power and influence that role has. You just can't tell someone that you own this metric and keep all of the decisions somewhere else. So what actually improved? Product managers started closer collaboration within the team. Previously, they could just drop in once a week and that's it. Engineers and data analysts started to see real users behind the data. We've got far much better understanding of what our clients need. And actually, this led to the following outcomes. First of all, more experiments and better experiments. The rate of the experiments grew 2 times. The ratio of the successful experiments grew from the 10% to 30%. And that's not because we've just become geniuses in a moment, but because we've got better at faster learning and better at framing the experiments. The second thing was about more focused and faster value delivery. The lead times dropped. Now we didn't need to pass the tasks across 4 different teams with 4 different backlogs, but we were able to take an idea from the concept to production and iterate on it. Third, that the new structure made it much easier to scale into new directions. When we wanted to open a new partner segment, we've just needed to set up a new stream, define clear goals and metrics for it, and that's it. The structure itself made it possible to easily focus within the new client types. Previously, we've had, I guess, one main client type, which was job seeker, for which we've delivered 80% of our functionality, and we've ignored the other partners. Within this change, they also got the proper attention. And that's something that was possible because of the structural change, not because we could fix that with better planning. Fourth, that we've seen the speeded up personal and company growth. We've got leaders that are responsible for implementing the company's strategy within the streams. And actually, this is something that helps us today to grow as a business on a tough market instead of freezing in. And the final thing that the execs focus shifted from the daily operations to building the strategy, bringing alignment across the streams, and building capabilities. So I don't want to leave you that everything got great. There are some things that we still need to focus on. We didn't get unified best practices across the streams. We still can see a significant difference between the teams in terms of the testing and delivery processes. We still can see the different people management practices across the streams, and we are still aiming for the unification there. The collaboration between the streams need the constant improvement. We still are focusing on improving communication, on avoiding like this is my territory behavior, and we still are aiming for the closer cooperation between the streams. We also needed to make the separate effort to make the role definitions clearer, to align expectations, to make the performance conversations aligned with the new structures that we've got. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that like the rework did magically fix everything. But the main difference that now the structure supports the behavior we want and not just fights against it. And if I had to compress this whole journey into a handful of lessons, it would be something like this. First, autonomy without information is just an abandonment. If you say you own this metric and don't give people dashboards, context, access to the product and financial data, you are not supporting them. You are just stepping away. Second, the structure should follow the value and not the history. We started from clients and flows of value for them, not from the reporting lines. Because otherwise you are just relabeling old silos, and that's it. Third, if you raise expectations, rise entrusted power too. Don't ask people to own outcomes and then expect them to ask for permission that about every decision that really matters. Fourth, you can't over-communicate the why. You can overcomplicate the solution, sure, but it's impossible, however, to explain the reasons behind your decision too much, especially during the hard stages. Constantly getting back to the purpose of the change helps to keep alignment between streams and between the people. And fifth, we didn't do this change just to onboard some fancy buzzword as a value streams. We did that because we wanted faster learning, clearer ownership, and team that thinks in terms of the outcomes. So let me get back to where I started. The moment when an engineer opens a graph, points to it and says, we did this, that's when autonomy is real. Not because someone wrote it in the job expectations, but because people can see and feel their value. Value streams, dashboards, platform work, all of those are just tools. The real goal is that feeling. And I deeply believe that our work can be meaningful if we care about what we do and not just coding the task. So this is why I decided to share our path to this dream today. And I do hope that our journey will allow you to take a somewhat different perspective at the processes you have within your company. Thank you.